Chapter 3. The journey begins. As the morning sun cast its golden light upon the world, Mary, Arina, and Fredric stood in solemn silence before the freshly dug grave of the old mage, nestled beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak tree behind the copper coin. The air was heavy with the weight of their grief, each lost in their own thoughts as they paid their respects to the fallen wizard. After a moment, Mary broke the silence, her voice tinged with sorrow. He was a good man, despite the dangers he faced. "May he find peace in the afterlife," she murmured, her words carried away by the gentle breeze. Arina nodded in agreement, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "He will be missed," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. Fredric remained silent, his gaze fixed upon the simple wooden cross marking the mage's final resting place. Though he had known the old wizard for only a short time, he felt a profound sense of loss at his passing, a deep-seated sadness that weighed heavily upon his heart. With a heavy sigh, Arina turned towards a tavern, her resolve hardening with each step. "We should gather our things and prepare for the journey ahead," she said, her voice steady despite the tumult of emotions swirling within her. Nodding in agreement, Mary and Fredric followed Arina back into the tavern, their footsteps echoing softly in the empty halls. Together, they gathered supplies for their journey, each item carefully chosen to ensure their survival in the wilderness beyond. Arina helped Fredric pack a light rucksack with the essentials he would need for the road ahead, a sturdy knife for protection, a compass to guide their way, a flask of water to quench their thirst, and a map of Troysia to chart their course through the unfamiliar lands. As Fredric secured the pack to his back, he felt a surge of anticipation mingled with apprehension. The weight of their quest pressed down upon him, its magnitude looming large in his mind. Yet, amidst the uncertainty of the road ahead, he found solace in the companionship of his newfound allies, their shared determination binding them together in purpose. With their preparations complete, Mary, Arina, and Fredric stood at the threshold of the copper coin, ready to embark on the journey that awaited them. As they stepped out into the morning light, their hearts filled with hope and resolve, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as one. As they stood on the threshold of departure, Arina and Fredric turned to bid Mary farewell. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the tavern, lending an air of solemnity to the moment. "Take care of yourself, Mary," Arina said softly, her voice filled with gratitude for the woman who had welcomed them into her home. Mary nodded, her eyes misting with unshed tears. "You too, Arina. And you, Fredric," she added, her gaze turning to her son. But before they could take another step, Mary held up a hand, a determined glint in her eye. "Wait just a moment," she insisted, disappearing into the depths of the tavern. Minutes passed before Mary reappeared, a worn cloak draped over her arm. With a gentle smile, she approached Fredric, enveloping him in its comforting embrace. "This belonged to your father," Mary explained, her voice thick with emotion. "He wore it on his travels, just as you will now." Tears welled in Fredric's eyes as he accepted the cloak, its familiar weight a tangible connection to his past. "Thank you, Mother," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Mary pulled him into a warm embrace, holding him close for a moment longer. "You will always be my son, no matter where the road will take you. Don't forget that," she murmured, her words a silent prayer for his safety. With a final squeeze, Mary released him, her gaze lingering on his face. "Now go," she said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. "But remember, you will always have a home here." Fredric nodded, his heart heavy with both sorrow and anticipation. With a final glance back at Mary, he followed Arina out into the cool night air, the weight of his mother's love a comforting presence against his skin as they embarked on their journey into the unknown. As they journeyed along the path between Fredric's hometown and the next town over, Arina's demeanor remained aloof, her gaze fixed on the horizon ahead. Despite Fredric's attempt to break the tension, she remained mostly silent, her thoughts seemingly elsewhere. Fredric, sensing her reluctance to engage, hesitated before speaking up. "Arina, could you?" Could you go over the plan again? He asked tentatively, aware of her usual brusque manner. Arina glanced at him, her expression softened only slightly by his request. Fine, she replied curtly, her tone betraying a hint of impatience. We're on the southernmost island of Eojebin. Our destination lies to the north, where we'll need to take ferries to reach the northern islands of Eojebin. Fredric nodded, though Arina's terse response left him feeling unsettled. And what about after we reach the northern islands? He pressed, hoping to glean more information about their journey ahead. Arina sighed, her annoyance evident. Once we reach the northern islands, we'll have to navigate through the orc realm of Hoknath and the dwarven realm of Crockett before finally reaching the elven realm of Meilion, she explained briskly, her tone conveying the gravity of their mission. Fredric swallowed nervously, realizing the magnitude of the task before them. Despite Arina's prickly demeanor, he knew he would have to rely on her expertise to guide them safely through the unfamiliar territories. As they continued their journey in silence, Fredric couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation about the challenges that lay ahead. With Arina's stoic presence beside him, he steeled himself for the trials to come, determined to see their mission through to its end. As they trudged along the winding path, Arina noticed the tension in Fredric's posture, his steps hesitant and uncertain. Sensing his unease, she made an effort to break the silence that hung between them. "So, Fredric," she began, her voice softer than usual, "tell me about your father. Your mother mentioned he was a traveler." Fredric glanced at her, surprised by her sudden interest. "Yes, he was," he replied, his tone tinged with nostalgia. "My father was a traveling merchant. He'd come home with all sorts of treasures and tales of the places he'd visited." Arina nodded, encouraging him to continue. "He'd tell me stories about bustling marketplaces, exotic lands, and daring adventures." Fredric reminisced a hint of wistfulness in his voice. "I always admired him for his courage and sense of adventure." As they walked, Fredric recounted fond memories of his father, his words painting a vivid picture of a man who had lived life to the fullest. However, his expression grew somber as he recalled the day their world was shattered. "One day, we received news that he had been attacked by a group of thugs while traveling," Fredric explained, his voice faltering slightly. "They robbed him and left him for dead. All he had left was his cloak, a reminder of the life he once led." Arina listened intently, her gaze softening as she observed the pain etched on Fredric's face. At that moment, she understood the weight of his loss and the burden he carried with him. Fredric paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts before continuing. "You see, that's where my passion for adventure comes from," he explained, his voice tinged with determination. "Growing up, I always admired my father's spirit of exploration and his willingness to embrace the unknown. Despite the dangers he faced, he never let fear hold him back." He cast a glance at Arina, his eyes alight with newfound resolve. "I've always dreamed of following in his footsteps, of experiencing the world beyond the confines of our village. But," he added, a hint of resignation creeping into his tone, "circumstances kept me tied here, helping my mother run the tavern." As they walked, Fredric's gaze wandered to the horizon, his mind filled with visions of distant lands and untold adventures. "Now," he said, his voice tinged with determination, "with this journey ahead of us, I finally have the chance to honor my father's legacy and carve out my own path." Arina listened attentively, her expression softened by Fredric's heartfelt words. In his desire to follow in his father's footsteps, she saw echoes of her longing for purpose and meaning in their quest. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, she found herself inspired by Fredric's unwavering spirit and newfound determination. "Your father would be proud of you, Fredric," Arina said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "And I have no doubt that together we'll make our own mark on this world." As they settled under the shade of the towering tree, Fredric let out a relieved sigh, sinking down against its sturdy trunk. Arina glanced at him with concern, noting the fatigue etched on his face. "You seem tired," she remarked, her voice tinged with sympathy. Fredric nodded wearily. "Yeah, walking for hours on end isn't exactly my idea of fun," he admitted. rubbing his sore feet. Arina's lips curved into a small smile. Well, luckily for you, we'll be taking breaks along the way. Can't have you collapsing from exhaustion before we even reach our destination, she teased lightly, grateful for the respite. Fredric took the opportunity to satisfy his curiosity about the other realms they would be traversing. So, tell me about the realm of the orcs, he prompted, his interest piqued. Arina leaned back against a tree, considering his question. Hoknath, the realm of the orcs, is a rugged and unforgiving land, she began, her voice carrying a hint of caution. The orcs are a fierce and proud people, known for their strength and martial prowess. She paused, as if contemplating her next words. It's said that they live by a strict code of honor, valuing loyalty and strength above all else. But make no mistake, Fredric, they can be formidable adversaries if provoked. Fredric listened intently, absorbing every word. The prospect of encountering the orcs filled him with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. Arina's gaze grew distant as she delved into the complexities of human-orc relations. Humans are permitted to enter Hoknath, but they're not exactly welcomed with open arms, she explained, her tone tinged with caution. After their defeat a century ago, the orcs view humans as weak and inferior, but beneath that disdain lies a deeper resentment, a lingering bitterness from the years of oppression under the human tyrant's rule. Fredric listened intently, absorbing the weight of her words. He couldn't imagine what it must be like to carry such animosity for generations, passed down through tales of past injustices. Will we be safe there? He asked, a hint of concern creeping into his voice. Arina's expression softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. As long as we tread carefully and show respect, we should be fine, she assured him. Besides, by then I'll have trained you into a formidable fighter, she added with a faint smile, her eyes reflecting a glimmer of determination. Fredric nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for her guidance and reassurance. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, he found solace in knowing that they faced them together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the landscape, Fredric and Arina finally reached the bustling town of Windmond. The weariness of their journey weighed heavily on their shoulders, prompting them to seek refuge for the night. We should rest here for the night, Arina suggested, casting a weary glance at the darkening sky. We can find supplies and equipment in the morning before we continue our journey. Fredric nodded in agreement, grateful for the prospect of a warm bed and a respite from their travels. Together, they made their way through the bustling streets until they found a modest inn, its welcoming glow a beacon of comfort amidst the encroaching darkness. Entering the inn, they were greeted by the cozy warmth of a crackling fire and the comforting aroma of hearty meals. Arina approached the innkeeper to secure a room for the night, while Fredric took a moment to savor the familiar sense of sanctuary that washed over him. With a room secured and their belongings stowed away, Fredric and Arina settled in for the night, their weary bodies grateful for the chance to rest. As they drifted off to sleep, the promise of a new day awaited them, brimming with possibilities and the unknown challenges that lay ahead.